Okay, so we're going to deep dive today into some pretty interesting stuff that's been happening lately
Yeah, some fascinating stuff.
surrounding NHL games in Canada
Mm-hmm.
and some fan reactions
Yeah.
to some U.S. Policy changes. So
And I think, a lot of people are curious about this. Like, what's going on up north of the border?
yeah, because I mean, it's not every day you see
No.
fans,
Right.
booing the American national anthem. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty unusual.
That is unusual. Yeah, it is. And what I think is so captivating about this is that it's not, your typical just like cheering or booing or whatever. It's like it seems to be tied to
Yeah,
something bigger happening outside of just the world of hockey.
yeah, it's
Yeah, it's a direct response
a reaction.
to some recent U.S. policy changes.
Yeah,
And so this past weekend, we saw Canadian fans expressing their opinions in a pretty,
pretty unconventional way.
yeah.
We saw this in a couple of different cities,
Mm-hmm.
Ottawa, Calgary, and maybe most notably in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And it's just so happened that the Detroit Red Wings were the opposing team in two of these games,
Yeah.
in Ottawa and Vancouver.
Yeah, I know.
So that really puts the spotlight on
Yeah,
the Red Wings' reactions
of course.
to this whole thing.
Yeah.
And especially for a player like Patrick Kane.
Mm.
He's American,
Mhm.
obviously a star player for the Red Wings.
Yeah.
And when he was asked about the booing, he
Yeah.
said, and I quote, "It's too bad. It is what it is." I guess you can maybe understand it from this side, but it seems like it's a thing that's going around the league right now.
Oh, that's an interesting.
Interesting reaction, right?
It is. On the surface, it seems like he's just stating facts.
Yeah.
But, there's this kind of layer of resignation there too, almost. Like he's saying,
Yeah.
well, this is happening. What can you do?
Yeah.
But then he adds this point about how it's happening across the league, which suggests that he sees it as a trend. Like
Mhm.
this is part of a bigger trend.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is fueling this trend? I mean, it can't just be about, one policy change, right?
Well, you're hitting on
Right.
a key point there. Sports, they've always been a reflection of society.
Absolutely.
They've always been a stage
Yeah.
where emotions run high.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about historical moments like the 1968 Olympics.
Yeah.
Tommy Smith and John Carlos
Mhm.
raising their fists in protest,
Yeah.
for civil rights.
For civil rights.
That was controversial.
Absolutely.
But it also ignited a lot of
Wow.
really crucial conversations.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you see any parallels between
Yeah.
protests like that and what we're seeing today?
Absolutely. I think what we're seeing now echoes those historical moments of athlete activism. And I mean,
Yeah.
while context is different,
Yeah.
it speaks to this enduring power of sport
Mm.
as a platform
Yeah.
for social and political expression.
Mm-hmm.
I think the question becomes, are we entering
Yeah.
an era where sporting events are becoming more politicized?
Yeah. And how does that affect
Mm,
someone like Todd McLellan,
right.
who's the Red Wings coach?
Yeah.
He's Canadian himself.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of put in
Yeah.
a tricky spot,
He's in the hot seat.
having to address
Yeah.
all this stuff.
For sure.
And it's interesting because he chose to remain kind of neutral.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I know why you're asking me that question, and I have my personal opinions on the political landscape,
Right.
but I'm going to keep those to myself, and I'm going to separate that from what we were all here for.
Yeah.
And that is the entertainment value of a hockey game.
Right.
That's a classic example of navigating this
It's a tightrope, isn't it?
tightrope walk
For
between
Randa.
personal convictions and your professional role.
Absolutely. He clearly has thoughts on the situation,
Yeah.
but he chooses to prioritize keeping the focus on the game itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that do a disservice to the larger conversation?
Right.
I mean, is it possible
Yeah.
to truly separate sports and politics in
Right.
today's world?
That's the $1,000,000 question I think McLellan's approach highlights.
Yeah.
How complex these situations really are. I mean, it's almost impossible to avoid the overlap between sports and politics these days.
Yeah.
And yet there's this expectation that,
Right.
sports should offer a sense of escapism,
Yeah.
a haven from the controversies of the world.
Right. Which brings us back to these fan reactions.
Mm-hmm.
Are they blurring the lines by booing the U.S. anthem, or are they rightfully using this platform to make a statement?
Right. I think it raises a fundamental question about the nature of fandom.
Yeah.
Are fans simply there to enjoy the game? Or do they have a right, even a responsibility to
Well.
use their collective voice on a larger stage?
Yeah.
And where's that line, where do we draw that line between passionate fandom and stepping over the line?
Yeah, so we see fans making a statement.
Right.
We see players caught in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
We see coaches like McLellan
Yeah.
trying to find a balance.
It's trying to stay neutral.
Leaves a lot to ponder.
It does. It really does make you wonder what the future holds for this whole intersection of sports and politics, Will we see more of this kind of fan activism? And how will leagues and teams and individual athletes respond?
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a fascinating dynamic with no easy answers.
It really is.
Yeah.